Welcome to the Great Man Within podcast. Every episode is designed to help you discover and live the great man within you. All right, gentlemen, it is time once again to talk about one of the most important areas of your life to master, which is enhancing the quality of your sleep. And I'm very specific to use the word quality instead of quantity because for one very specific reason. Many of you guys are fathers of young children, and quantity of sleep is not always within your control. I also understand that in many cases, that quality of sleep, if you have kids waking you up every hour on the hour or a crying baby, that's also not always within your control. However, these 10 practices that I'm about to share with you to enhance the quality of your sleep, many of them are within your control and are especially even more important for those of you who are already struggling with quantity and quality. All right, let me take a few minutes to set up what I mean when I'm talking about quality of sleep. And then these 10 best practices will really help to fill in the blanks around it. So for many years of my life, I was getting the proper quantity of sleep, the 7 to 8 hours. I was an early adopter of that. When I heard the research about it, I said, I'm going to make sure that happens. And yet I still found that even with 7 to 8 hours of quantity, many days I found myself waking up in the morning, not refreshed, finding myself in the early afternoons in that dip of energy, finding myself fading in the evening earlier than I thought I should. And so I started scratching my head, kind of going like, well, I'm doing what they're saying I'm supposed to be doing. How come I don't feel better about this? Well, when I dug deeper and I started to unpack the hidden mysteries of quality of sleep, I realized that for me personally, and I'm not the only one, it feels like 2/3 of the equation for me was really about getting the proper quality of sleep, and only 1/3 was about the quantity. And so when I say quality of sleep, what are the components that comprise quality of sleep? And really, I can boil it down to two things. It's the amount of deep sleep that you get and the amount of Rem sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. And I want to give you working definitions of what deep sleep and Rem sleep are, what their functions are. And I'm going to be reading this from the Oura Ring, which is my sleep tracking device. You guys know I'm a huge passionate believer in the Oura Ring. I've had it since, I think, December or January of I think somewhere around 2018. So I've had it for over 3 years now. And it's widely considered to be the most accurate trackable on the marketplace. I don't trust the other devices that are out there. The NBA uses the Oura Ring. A lot of other sleep researchers, the special forces of the military use the Oura Ring as the most accurate sleep trackable. So here's what they say about deep sleep. When you're in deep sleep, your blood pressure drops, heart and breathing rates are steady, arm and leg muscles are relaxed, and it's harder for you to wake up. During deep sleep, your muscles grow and repair, your immune system is refreshed, and brain flushes out toxins. Usually, you get more deep sleep during the early night. If you want to get more deep sleep, try to keep your sleep schedule consistent. Avoid heavy meals, stimulants, and bright screens 1 to 2 hours before bed. Long naps and caffeine in the late afternoon and evening can decrease the amount of deep sleep, whereas exercising regularly can increase it. So, actually, they've kind of hit in this definition a number of the best practices I'm going to reveal in these 10 steps. But the important point here that I want you to take away is during deep sleep, your muscles grow and repair. Immune system is refreshed and brain flushes out toxins. And usually you get more deep sleep during the early night. These are very important. I'm going to hit more of these themes in a few minutes. Your Rem sleep is also critical. Here's what the Oura Ring has to say about it. Rem sleep, rapid eye movement, is associated with dreaming, memory consolidation, and creativity. This kind of sleep, Rem sleep, plays an important role in re-energizing your mind and body. Rem sleep includes all of your sleep, including the kind of sleep you get during your naps. Rem is regulated by circadian rhythms, in other words, your natural body clock. I'll say more about that in a few minutes. And typically, you get more Rem sleep during the latter half of the night. So the deep sleep comes at the front end of your sleep cycle. Rem sleep comes at the back end of your sleep cycle. This is where it gets really important around quantity. And I know I said I'm not going to emphasize quantity as much, but if you are going to sleep later than you normally would out of alignment with your body's circadian rhythms, you're going to actually sacrifice your deep sleep. If you are not getting a full night of sleep and maybe you're only getting, say, 5 to 6 hours of total, you're probably lopping off more of the Rem sleep that you need for memory consolidation and creativity, these kinds of things. So it's important to understand what these quality components are and at what parts of the sleep cycle they appear. So now that we have a working definition of that, I want to share with you these 10 best practices for enhancing the quality of your sleep. And some of these have been shared from the book that I highly recommend called Why We Sleep by Dr. Matthew Walker. It's about unlocking the power of sleep and dreams. And I'll reference this again at the end. I'm going to link all of these things in the show notes for you for an easy, quick reference guide. Best practice number 1 to enhance the quality of your sleep. Understand your circadian rhythm. Okay, so this is your natural body clock. What Dr. Matthew Walker says in Why We Sleep, there are 2 forces, natural forces that are at play that tell you and your body when it's time to sleep. The first one is understanding your circadian rhythm. I'll get to the other one in a few minutes. Your circadian rhythm is genetically pre-designed. You don't get to choose it. So the simplest examples of this are you a night owl or a morning person? These are actually genetically designed into your system. This is what Dr. Walker says. So either you're someone who is a night owl, gets energy at the evening, likes to go to bed later, or you're a morning person. Get up in the morning early, and most of your productivity and your energy comes in the morning. I happen to be a morning person. What's fascinating, what Dr. Walker talks about is if you look at our society and the way that it's set up, it rewards the morning person. Most of our businesses are set up around the morning schedule. You work in the morning, your formal work hours, if that's a thing anymore. I know most of us are working late into the evenings, but formal work hours are typically still some version of 8 to 6 or 9 to 5, that kind of thing. That favors the morning person. Night owls as a group of people, and this was fascinating in the book, suffer higher rates of stress-related illnesses like diabetes, Alzheimer's diagnoses, anxiety, and depression. Why? Because the night owls are staying up later at night, but getting up earlier in the morning, shortchanging themselves their sleep so that they can actually meet the demands of most of normal society's expectations of being to work at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. So if you look at the dramatic effect this has on the quality of your health, shouldn't you be taking that seriously? So take a look at your life. Like, are you a night owl? Are you a morning person? And you have to ask yourself the question, is my lifestyle, is my work schedule aligned with my natural circadian rhythm? And if not, am I willing to pay the long-term consequences, put myself at a higher risk for panic attacks, stress-related illnesses, diabetes, these kinds of things, simply to kind of fit in a square peg into a round hole of someone else's idea of my work schedule? So take a look at that. And if you are someone who has, more flexibility around their work schedule, can you start to redesign your work hours? Maybe you're having a conversation with your employer, or if you are someone who sets their own hours, can you make that a more formal version of aligning your energy with your sleep? So step number 1, understand your circadian rhythms. Best practice number 2 is establish a 90-minute bedtime window where you can consistently go to sleep. For me, I go to bed between 10 and 11:30 p.m. 5 to 7 nights a week. I would encourage you to strive for 4 to 5 nights a week where you can hit that bedtime window. That is in alignment with your circadian rhythm. Why is that important? Well, if you're confusing your body by going to bed at different times every night, like 7 p.m. one night and 1 a.m. the next night, and then 3 a.m. the next night, and then 11 p.m. the next night, your body doesn't know when wake hours are and when sleep hours are. It's confusing the hell out of your system, and it's out of alignment with your circadian rhythm. But you are also not a child that can go to bed at the same time every single night. Your life is a little bit more complicated than that. I've found that a 90-minute bedtime window and striving to hit that 4 to 5 nights a week offers enough flexibility And it also starts to get your body to wind down naturally so that for me, like at 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night, I start to realize I'm not going to take on some work task that's going to get me fired up, jacked up emotionally and mentally while I'm trying to wind down to hit that 90-minute bedtime window. So it's a great way of just being able to create enough structure and flexibility so that I know I can ensure that most nights of the week I'm going to get a high quality level of sleep. That also helps you, like we just talked about before, where the deep sleep comes at the front end of your sleep cycle. If you are in alignment with your circadian rhythms and you find that you're falling asleep within that 90-minute bedtime window, you will get the quality and the quantity of deep sleep that you need by doing that more regularly. Here's the thing for me. When I go to bed at midnight outside of my window, I find that I get about half the amount of deep sleep that I need. Even if I get 8 hours of sleep, even if I sleep till 8 a.m. the next morning, I will not make up the deep sleep. I will have lost it by going to bed that late. But by going to bed in my normal sleep windows, I can get about an hour and a half of deep sleep, which is what I need long-term to repair my muscles. I put a lot of wear and tear on my muscles, with the workouts that I do. So hitting that window is super important. Best practice number 3, no food in the last 1 to 2 hours before you go to bed. I know this is a tough one, especially for you parents out there who don't always control, like your kids got to get to sleep and then it's finally time for you to eat. But the research shows, guys, that even if you're able to fall asleep after eating a late dinner, that your body is working really hard to break down the food that's in your system. And if you're eating carb-rich, like pastas or breads, or you have a lot of dessert, ice cream, wine that has sugar in it, that your blood alcohol or your blood sugar levels will spike, which completely kicks you out of deep sleep. So you'll be in light sleep, you'll sacrifice the quality, and when you do this over the course of time, it really affects you long term. I am like a senior citizen now. I finish my last bite of food most nights by 6:30 p.m. And I'm in bed, going to sleep by around 10:30 p.m., 11 o'clock some nights. So I will have had like 4.5 hours of my body breaking down my food before I go to sleep. I really like to go to bed almost a little bit hungry. The nights where I have the best quality of sleep, bar none, and this happens over and over again, is when I go to bed just a little bit hungry, because my body is now not spending so much energy to break down the food. It's actually spending its energy repairing my nervous system. And I will see the results over and over and over again on my Oura Ring. So can you start with making a commitment to yourself to not eat anything within that last hour or two, and eventually try to get it longer if that's possible? Best practice number 4, no water, no liquids within the last 60 to 90 minutes before you go to sleep. Now, I'm not a doctor, right? So for you, if you dehydrate during sleep, then throw that it's out the window. But I found for me and for a lot of the men that I speak to, when you're drinking liquids, even trying to hydrate yourself before you go to bed, you wake up once, twice, 3 times over the course of the night to pee. I did this last night. I broke my own rule, and I drank some water before I went to sleep because I was running these webinars until late in the evening. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and it affected the quality of sleep that I had. And then I woke up at 5:30 in the morning instead of 6:30 this morning because I had to pee again, and I couldn't quite go back to sleep. So I had 2 wake-ups that messed with the quality of my sleep. When I don't drink anything within the last 90 minutes, I can typically sleep right through the evening. As a 42-year-old guy, and I know this is usually around the age where a lot of guys start to wake up more times in the evening, and I can sleep straight through 7.5 hours when I don't have too much to drink before I go to bed. Best practice number 5, no screens in the last 60 to 90 minutes before you go to bed. At a minimum, guys, no screens within the last 30 minutes. The best practice is 60 to 90. The bare minimum is 30 minutes. And I know this is tough because many of us unwind with television, with watching Netflix, maybe on your iPad in your bed before you go to bed, or checking in on the emails last time. I just got to tell you, over and over again, and I have 3 years of statistical research on this on my Oura Ring, on the nights where I'm running webinars. Last night is a Thursday night. I run a 1-hour mastermind call for Mastermind 1.0 from 7 to 8 p.m. and then a Mastermind 2.0 call from 8:15 to 9:15 p.m. On those nights, doesn't matter, even when I get to bed at 10:15 p.m., my deep sleep goes down by a third because I'm staring into a screen for those 2 hours right before I go to bed, even when I'm wearing blue blocker glasses. Especially because lights are on in my apartment, it messes with my quality of sleep. Same thing happens on Monday nights where I'm in my men's group and we're on a Zoom call for 2 hours. My quality of sleep is diminished because I'm staring into a screen. On the other nights where I don't have a screen tethered to my face, my deep sleep enhances by 33 to 50%. I've got 3 years worth of data to prove it. So start to create best practices around not using any screens, at least for the last half hour. And please try not to be staring into a screen for hours before you go to bed because it will mess with the quality. Best practice number 6, buy yourself a sleep tracker. Now, I'm a proponent of buying the best because I know that I have a couple of different sleep trackers that I've used over time. But if you can't count on the quality of the measurement statistics, then I don't know necessarily why you would bother with it. Keith Bracci, who's been on this podcast a couple of times, we've laughed about this because he's had an Oura Ring and a Garmin watch. So have I, because we both had a Garmin watch that tracks our sleep quality provided to us by the military veteran group that we took down to Costa Rica for ayahuasca to measure our vitals. And we've seen dramatic disparities between the sleep quality that our Oura Ring tells us we have and the Garmin watch. And what Keith has said is, when he wears his Oura Ring, his quality of deep sleep is trash. He's just a terrible deep sleeper. But his Garmin watch has told him he's a phenomenal deep sleeper. And he said, hey, my problem for solving deep sleep is just buy a new tracking device. And we laughed about it, but Oura is known to be the best in the market. And it's about a $299 investment. So it's not cheap. But over the course of your freaking lifetime, and you're talking about stress-related illnesses that could cause you tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical bills, in supplements, in medication and drugs. Think about the sleeping pills you have to go on at some point in the future. I mean, just 1 year of that will outspend a $300 investment at point in time here to not just set you up for baseline, but to set you up to thrive. So get a quality sleep tracking device so that you can start to measure the impact of these changes, of going to bed at certain times, of eating at certain times, of eliminating screens at certain times. Best practice number 7, make sure that your room is cool. All the research has shown that about a 68-degree room allows for optimal sleep conditions. If you're like me and you get overheated when you sleep, it will immediately impact the quality of your sleep. I like to sleep in Arctic conditions. For me, I like to put on my air conditioner, and I bought a chili pad, which is basically like a heating blanket in reverse. You put it on top of your mattress, and it cools your mattress. So when I get into bed, I actually lay down on a mattress that's cool. That was an absolute game changer for me. I used to wake up 3 or 4 times a night, overheated. Now instead, I sleep right through the night in coolness. 68 degrees seems to be the temperature that most sleep researchers and experts will tell you is the right for the room. Best practice number 8, make sure that your sleeping conditions are dark as possible. So some people like to put blackout curtains, shades, to make sure that there's no light coming in. If you're someone who likes to wake up with the light coming in the morning, then maybe this is not something for you. But I know that many of you want to sleep longer than you do, but the light comes in and it wakes you up. Blackout curtains or something as simple as an eye mask is something that's super helpful. And I find that when I use an eye mask, especially on the weekends where I have more flexibility to sleep in, I'll sleep an extra hour, which is super useful because that extra hour usually enhances my Rem sleep, which comes at the back end, right? The tail end of my sleep cycle. And that extra quality of Rem sleep helps for memory consolidation and creativity. Those are the days I feel a little extra hop in my step. So on the weekends, I'll tend to put my eye mask on. I don't have blackout curtains, so I can sleep that extra hour and enhance the REM sleep. Step number 9, best practice number 9, caffeine. You gotta understand it. I'm a huge caffeine proponent. I love drinking my coffee. It's great for creativity, getting me out of bed in the morning. I'm not giving it up. But something I learned in Why We Sleep by Dr. Matthew Walker changed my life in terms of understanding the impacts of caffeine. So I mentioned earlier that Dr. Walker says there are 2 factors that contribute to your sleep cycle. Number one is, or to contribute to you and your body knowing when it's time to sleep. The first is the circadian rhythms of your body, night owl, morning person. The second is something that he calls sleep pressure. Now, from the moment you wake up in the morning, there's something in your body that is developed and produced that increases the pressure to sleep. Meaning, over the course of your day, from the moment you wake up, the pressure to sleep is increasing. And at first, obviously, you're not really aware of that because you've just gotten sleep. But as the day goes on, there's more and more pressure to sleep. And this is caused by, and I don't know if I'm using the right terminology here, but like a molecule or something in your system called adenosine. And adenosine, it starts to increase in volume in your body. And then when you hit that tipping point of adenosine in your body, that is when it's time to go to bed. Now, here's the impact that caffeine has on adenosine. Caffeine actually clogs up the adenosine receptors, meaning that the adenosine cannot find the receptors. And when the receptors are blocked from the adenosine, your body doesn't want to go to sleep, right? Because the receptors can't get the adenosine that tells your body that it's time to go to bed. It doesn't make you sleepy. So caffeine is great at basically just blocking that sleep pressure from you being felt. Now, the issue with that is caffeine has a really long half-life. Michael Pollan, who wrote the book How to Change Your Mind, who's come out with another book called Your Mind on Plants, had a recent interview with Tim Ferriss on Tim Ferriss' podcast. And he had about a 10-minute conversation with Tim Ferriss about caffeine. And he's like, caffeine has a quarter half-life of 12 hours. Meaning, if you have your last cup of coffee at noon, a quarter of that caffeine will still be in your body by midnight, which is going to mess with your sleep. Now, you can make the determination of like, is a quarter of the caffeine still okay? I've made that trade-off. For me, I stopped drinking my caffeine by 9 or 10 a.m. so that as little of that is in my body by the time I go to bed as possible. But what happens over the long period of time, and this was fascinating that I read about, is if that caffeine doesn't get flushed until later in the evening, then the adenosine doesn't get to hit your receptors until later in the evening, and that adenosine may not be flushed from your system fully by the time you wake up in the morning. And so that adenosine, even when you've gotten your 8 hours of sleep, may still be in your system in the morning because it has piled up overnight because your caffeine was clogging up the receptors. And so you need to blow it out by drinking more caffeine in the morning, but the adenosine is still in your system, and then you just continue the cycle of the caffeine and the adenosine being in your system, and your body's all out of whack. So that woke me up to, whoa, I need periodically to create one of these detoxes from coffee and to get off of it for like a week or two to flush my system of all the caffeine because of its long half-life or quarter life, to flush my system of all that old adenosine that's been blocked from being in the receptors and then getting cleaned out during my sleep because the caffeine's been in there. And I just took about a 2-week break from caffeine as I went down to Costa Rica and I had to fast, as in preparation for ayahuasca. And as soon as I did, guys, some crazy stuff started to happen on my sleep. I average about 1.5 hours of deep sleep per night in the last 12 months. Some of the nights when I was off of caffeine, I was getting between 2 to 3 hours of deep sleep a night, which was blowing my mind. You're talking about a 100% increase. And I'm like, whoa, if I were getting like 2.5, 3 hours of deep sleep every single night, what might that mean for my long term? And I'm actually seriously considering, like, do I radically reduce or eliminate caffeine as a part of my lifestyle? Because, like the long-term effects, I don't quite know right now. But you have to understand the impact that caffeine is having on your system. And so reducing the amount of caffeine or periodically doing some of these detoxes from it will be helpful. And then practice number 10 of enhancing the quality of your sleep is educating yourself. Read a book on the topic. And the best one that I've found, the one that's held out there, is called Why We Sleep by Dr. Matthew Walker. I've already shared a number of the practical tips that are here. I haven't even finished the book. Most of what I've shared with you has only come from the first 100 pages. And if you loved Sapiens, that book about a brief history of humankind, I feel like Why We Sleep is kind of a combination of Sapiens and then also, just a really well-researched book on best practices on why to sleep and how we sleep and some of the things that are blocking us from sleep. So with all that said, I'll do a quick rundown of the 10 best practices again. And again, these are going to be in the show notes. Number 1, understand your natural circadian rhythms. Are you a morning person? Are you a night owl? Align your days in accordance with that to the best of your ability. Practice number 2, establish a 90-minute bedtime window. Mine's 10 to 11:30 p.m. to make sure that your body knows when your natural wind down time is. Try to hit that 4 to 5 nights a week. Step number 3, no food within the last 1 to 2 hours before bed so that your body can spend its time breaking down toxins, repairing your immune system instead of churning to break down the food that's in your belly. Practice number 4, try not to drink any water within the last 60 to 90 minutes before you go to sleep so you aren't waking up multiple times per evening, disrupting your deep and REM cycles. Step number 5, no screens in the last 60 to 90 minutes as a best practice, at a bare minimum, not in the last 30 minutes. Step 6, get yourself a sleep tracker. I suggest the Oura Ring. Make an investment in the future. All the decades that you have left to live, $300, average that out as to how many cents per day that would cost you, especially even just to avoid medications and other stress-related illnesses. Not to mention the impact it's going to have on your productivity and the quality of your output and performance in your life. Get a sleep tracker so that you can understand what are the habits, the practices, the times of sleep that enhance the quality of your sleep. Step 7, make sure your room is in sleeping cool conditions, 68 degrees, best practice. Step number 8, dark sleeping conditions, whether it's blackout shades or putting on a sleeping mask to keep you from waking up and disturbing your cycle, especially in those last 30 to 60 minutes of sleep where your REM sleep is really at its highest. Step 9, understand caffeine, its half-life, how it blocks the adenosine receptors, and how over the course of time you should be doing some periodic flushes of caffeine from your system. And then practice number 10, educate yourself. You just did that by listening to this podcast, but go deeper. Get yourself the book, Why We Sleep by Dr. Matthew Walker. I would love to hear in the Facebook group which of these you've chosen to take on, which was really powerful. Come in the group and maybe make a proclamation as to what you're going to try to put into or what you will put into practice. So in the show notes, Facebook group for men, the Great Man Within podcast is going to be linked, and I'll see you there.